Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. Joining us here on the program today is someone who's going to give us quite a bit of enlightenment when it comes to the subject that most people want to try to avoid, and that is death. It's interesting that sometimes we spend so much time preoccupied with the fact that we want to put off what becomes inevitable. And if there is a fear, what is that fear based on? There's the Christian belief that if you die, that you're going to be judged at the pearly gates, and you'll either be going on your way to bliss, 75 degrees of weather all day, every day, or you're going to be down in hell just burning 24 hours a day. I find it interesting, too, that we find it that they actually have time in places like this all at the same time. But in many other cultures, it's also celebrated in a different way. Dying is actually celebrated in the Tibetan rites, as well as in the Chinese culture, where you get to work out and take care of what is simply known as karma, things that you've done through your life. There's also the idea of reincarnation, the idea that we can move on to a new life, see if we can learn some new lessons until we get it right. Joining us here on the program today is author of a new book simply titled Angels of the 21st Century, and I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program our guest, Sonia Grace. And Sonia, how are you doing today?
Hi, Dan. I'm doing great.
Very good. Now, let's talk about what your new book is and why you wrote it.
Well, Angels in the 21st Century is a new perspective on death and dying, and I wrote this book because I feel, after working with lots of clients for years and years, that there is this continual question and arm wrestling match, if you will, that people have with the process of dying, whether it's a loved one or their own death. And I want to just give people a very simple, clear perspective on how to shift your view just even 2 degrees to experience it in a different way. Because, as you said earlier, we are extremely burdened with the confines of all of our different religions that we've grown up in, as to what that process really means and what it's about and what we should expect. And so, I'm the very person. I'm, the spiritual teacher, the spiritual intuitive that's standing with the person who's dying, who's been of a certain religion their whole life. And that person is getting ready to go through this tremendous passage, and they're questioning what their beliefs are.
Mm-hmm.
Is this really? I've done some bad things in my life. Am I really going to hell? And it's like, no, you're not going to hell. I mean, I personally don't believe that there's a hell. If there is a hell that exists, it's here on earth. It's what we create here on earth. Because we all have, we live within what's called the duality, and there is good and bad and, hot and cold and light and dark, and, there is this duality that exists, and I believe that we create, either a blissful state or we create what some people would refer to as hell.
Mm-hmm. Now, why did you title your book Angels of the 21st Century?
Because I feel that it's really important. Part of my fight through this life is to make a pathway for people like me. And I think that there's not too many people out there in the world who are like me, but I do believe that there needs to be a reverence and respect brought back into humanity for visionaries and mystics and, spiritual intuitives that has been lost for a long time. People like me in the old days, a long time ago, even within the Catholic Church, priests used to consult people like me and get the information that they needed to take out to the people from, people who are like visionaries. And that happened hundreds of years ago, and that is a really great example of how the two worlds cross-connected prior to the whole, Christianity movement, 300 BC, 3000 BC. I mean, visionaries, people who were like me, were used all the time. I mean, we advised people who ran empires.
Mm-hmm.
There was a great deal of respect, a great deal of understanding that was the person's ability and gifts and their calling in this life. And as in any industry, any profession, you will find people who are, really good at what they do, and you'll find people who aren't very good at what they do, and they're doing it, but they're not doing it very well.
Mm-hmm.
That exists as well in the world of healers and spiritual intuitives, and I wanted this book to pave a pathway for people to understand and receive information about this from a spiritual perspective that is not prescribing to any one religion.
Now, in your book, you talk about 4 essential bodies. Could you describe for our listeners what is meant by that? Because to me, I understand it myself. It's the idea of how we are in reality, if you will. But describe what is meant by the 4 bodies.
When I work with people, I'm looking at them on this level of the 4 essential bodies: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And so I'm addressing, where that person is in alignment or out of alignment, if you will, of these 4 essential bodies. So let's say somebody calls me and says, I've got this really bad backache, and I don't know what to do about it. My back's just killing me. And, I've got this issue with my husband. I can't seem to, communicate well with him, and he's not getting where I'm at. And, I'm feeling really disconnected sort of with God and spirituality and, my belief systems. And so I'm assessing this whole thing going, okay, back pain, too much burden, too much put upon this woman. She feels like she's carrying the whole load. She's not communicating well. There's an emotional issue that's directly feeding into the physical problem. And then you have the spiritual issue where she's not feeling connected to her source, to what she believes in. She's not connected. So it's actually causing pain in her physical body. So it's my way of helping people map out how one of these 4 essential bodies can affect all 4. Mm-hmm. The emotional body will affect the physical body. The spiritual body will affect the emotional body, and then the physical body. And the mental body affects all of them as well. Certainly our thought process and how we're thinking, how we're digesting our mental information every day is going to affect us.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious why you have discovered, if you have, why people generally have a fear of death, but yet they'll go about their lives really not living. It's almost as though they are a living dead, if you will.
Well, Dan, you've talked to me so many times, and you know that I'm, really sensitive, and I see the spirit realm, and I hear it, and I smell it, and I feel it, and that I have all sensory systems on high. And so my ability to communicate with loved ones and people who are on the other side, this has been going on my whole life since I was a little kid, and I'm really comfortable with helping people. I have a lot of people who do call me and say, my mom's dying. Can you help me? Can you help her? Because she's not real clear on what's happening or where she's going, and I've had numerous conversations with people, either over the phone or actually in person with them, in their process of passing. And I think it's because I'm able to give people comfort in that process. People might be in the hospital, and I'm able to tell them that I in fact do see your mother standing there, and she's waiting for you. She's going to help you across. Does that mean that there aren't angels and Jesus and God and, Krishna and Buddha and everybody else that's going to be? Well, of course they're all there. It's just for that person specifically, I'm going to let them know specifically who's there, who's waiting for them, and that they are not alone in this process. That's the most important thing I think people need to realize when it's their time for their death, is they're not alone. Mm-hmm. The spirit realm is immense.
So it sounds to me like probably the biggest fear about dying is that people feel that they'll be alone.
Yes. Yeah. My dad was the classic example when he said, I said, Dad, what do you think happens to us when we die? This was when I was younger. And he says, well, honey, as far as I'm concerned, you're gone. You're in the ground. That's it. I was like, wow, that's it? And I just, I laugh because I think, how many people probably walk around really thinking that's probably it, that this is it.
Mhm.
And yet I can't imagine what incredible creation we are as souls, and then on top of that, to be in human form, would even for a moment create something so magnificent and say, yeah, this is the only time this is it.
Mhm. That's the end of the road, pretty much.
Yeah, I don't buy that. And there's too many experiences that I've had personally with clients that completely validate, past life experiences and the fact that we do reincarnate. Mm-hmm. And, yes, that is more of a prescription to Eastern religion. However, I think hands down it's right on. I completely believe it because there's too many things out there right now that are, proof that this is in fact what happens to us. I did a reading for a client once, and a past life reading, and discovered that her last lifetime she was a famous singer. This woman that was, in Asia, and she did some research after we did this reading, and she actually found this woman. She researched, singers in this region that she was in, and found the woman, found pictures of her, and it was really, really amazing. This woman looked like her, mm-hmm. and she felt totally connected to her and said, I'm sure this is who I have been. This is who I was. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a little boy that I'm sure you heard about this, too, on the news, who told his parents about what kind of plane he flew and that he had been a pilot. And this little boy was only like 5 years old, 6 years old. And they researched everything he was telling them. He knew everything about the type of planes that they flew in World War II. I mean, to a T. And they found exactly where he said his plane went down, and they researched it further and, found out who the pilot was. And, I mean, it's just there's too many experiences I think people have that are, well, and, of course, we have the Dalai Lama, so need I say more?
Mm-hmm.
I
know it's interesting. If anybody ever gets the opportunity to see the movie, I believe it's Kundun, and it shows how the Dalai Lama and its new reincarnation discovers about himself, and they're following this and realizing, okay, this is the next reincarnation. I think what's interesting about, say, Buddhism, for example, is the idea that you can't reach enlightenment in Buddhism until all sentient beings reach enlightenment, so it's a Buddha responsibility to keep coming back until that happens. And it kind of gives you a sense of purpose where, in a way, it almost seems like, okay, it almost really isn't working in this life, so let's go ahead and kind of get it over and move on to the next one and see if we can make it work in this one. Can you explain how karma and reincarnation at times can actually tie themselves together?
Well, and this is my humble understanding of this. I feel that in the process of how I work with people in karma and reincarnation is if there is a karmic event, meaning karma to me is the stuff that's unresolved, the stuff that we experience in our life and we're unresolved about it. You have a big blowout with someone in your family and you never resolve it. You never come to terms with them. Everybody dies, and guess what? You're more than likely, karmically speaking, going to manifest again in the next lifetime and meet this person, be a family member with this person, whatever, be in relationship with them so you can work this out. Okay, so there is the tie to me of karma and reincarnation, is that what we haven't resolved, what we haven't worked out, we will come back and do again. The real question to me for people is how can people turn that light switch on so that they're actually remembering, they're conscious and going, oh, okay, I'm here just working this stuff out again and I need to resolve it. And if someone hasn't done, quote unquote, a lot of work on themselves, or they haven't done, a past life reading, or they haven't had the kinds of experiences that you and I are talking about right now, maybe the best way to identify it is to simply look at their life and go, wow, I've had kind of this reoccurring theme, because we all have. I mean, you can find them throughout your life. You can go, I keep manifesting the same type of situation over and over, and take that situation and find where you really do have difficulties with it. You're having a difficult time. And most important for anyone to clear karma, I think, immediately, is to forgive yourself and to forgive the person who it involves. Forgiveness is a really powerful tool, and I'm able, when I work with people, I actually have, a process that I do of clearing the karma when I go back and look at their past lives and see the bigger patterns that have gone on for lifetimes. But I feel it's important that people also have the ability, which they do, to handle things and say, okay, I'm going to forgive this person, and let's not forget that we can hold people accountable for what they did, but we can still forgive them, because without forgiveness, there's a pretty big bet on from what I can see, that we'll come back and we'll somehow do that dance with them again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting stuff. Now, you brought up forgiveness. Now, this is a pretty interesting area that sometimes I don't think people really understand the true power of. Let's talk about what the power of forgiveness, what the definition of forgiveness is.
Well, I feel the power of forgiveness is the key, the ticket to clearing one's karma in an immediate sense. Let's say, I have a big fight with my Aunt Jane, and we can't seem to come to terms with each other. We just can't get over it. My way of clearing that karma in this lifetime would be to forgive Aunt Jane. Do I have to say that to her directly? Do I have to go to Aunt Jane and say, Aunt Jane, I really forgive you and I want you to forgive me? No, I don't believe that's true. I think that if we have the intention in our heart, and really this is the key word, intention, in our heart to forgive that person and to be forgiven, and that we make it a process within ourselves, that it is as powerful and as meaningful. But I also feel that people have to understand forgiveness is sort of the, I term it as the part of the homework that we have to do here. Our main homework is to feel our feelings, but the karmic work or the karmic experience, it boils down to being a very simple equation, and it is to love at the deepest level of your being, to feel your feelings, and if we can keep those things in mind, as simple as it sounds, it's a great equation for, I think, having the opportunity to live your life from a place of consciousness and hopefully have some realization as you go along your path as to what your karma is that you're carrying, so that you can continue to clear that as well.
Now, it's interesting how perspectives about dying seem the same but just slightly different with different cultures. Could you describe a couple just to give our listeners an idea?
Well, I think that there's a lot of belief, as we talked earlier, in the Christian faith of wanting to have the pearly gates, and we're going to have a choice of heaven or hell depending on how we've lived our lives. And I find in our culture there's a lot of people who wrestle with that. There's also people in the Islamic faith that believe that when someone is dying, it's the job of the friends and family to gather around the ill person and help them to remember their commitment to God. Believe that death is the will of Allah. The Hindu perspective is people have a tremendous amount of, it's easier for them in that they feel that their experience is not the end. They're going to go on in the next life.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have more lifetime, as in the Buddhist perspective as well. I mean, but there's obviously in those two particular religions the issue of karma as well. There's, everybody has a different way of dealing with it. I remember my grandmother telling me, she lived in Norway and grew up in Norway, that in the old day in Norway, they did not bodies right away, and that the family had to take care. Her sister died. She had, and everybody, when I tell that story, everybody goes, ew, awful, and yet, I mean, God, what a really real way of dealing with death. And if there was somebody in my life when I was growing up that was very comfortable with death, it was my grandmother. I mean, she's the one that took me by the hand and marched me up to my great-grandpa's casket and said, take a look, this is death. And as harsh as that may have been to a 7-year-old, it definitely was part of life, and that's how she viewed it. And I am very grateful to her for that.
Now, you have the ability, and this kind of gets to be a stretch for people when you talk about past lives and the ability to see what that past life is. And in your book, you described an interesting story about a person that you had worked with that had chronic neck pain year after year, and after MRIs and CAT scans, nobody can seem to figure out what it is. Now, talk about what that's all about.
Well, people have patterns, as you know, like in this lifetime, we have patterns that we create, for men or women. I keep meeting different people. The one I just met is blonde, and the one before that was brown hair, and the one before that was dark. But it's the same pattern. It's the same person. It's just a different body and a different hair color.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pattern. That means that the person is dealing with the same issues, and it doesn't matter who comes to them. It's going to be the same issues because that's what their vibration is. That's what they need to work out. So in terms of lifetimes, we have lifetimes of patterns. And this particular story you're referring to is a woman who had this, chronic neck pain, and she'd gone to doctors, MRIs, CAT scans. No one could find out what was wrong. I was sort of like her last hope of, okay, I don't know what else to do. What can you do? And so we did a past life reading, and I said there's a bigger pattern here. And sure enough, we went back, way back, and I think it was the 1400s. She had been beheaded in this lifetime. Well, to be beheaded in any lifetime is a really shocking thing.
Sure.
And she was very. She just, when she died, she just could not handle that had happened and that was happening to her. So the karma, if you will, of that event is that she took that shock and that disbelief that she died this way with her. And sure enough, in the next lifetime, she manifested it again. She was beheaded again in her next life. And again, shocked, disbelief, unable to really fathom that people could do that to her. And then she had, I think, 3 more lifetimes where she continued to manifest dying by neck pain injury. She was hung. And so I went through each of these lifetimes and cleared the karma, for her of that situation. She's forgiving the people who killed her. They're forgiving her. It's a whole process that I do. And she has had no neck pain since we did this.
So you're able to clear that up in this lifetime, then?
Yes, absolutely. And I feel that it's 2 things. It's one, it's bringing it to consciousness so the person is actually conscious of what happened, and 2, it's being able to forgive. I don't care how long ago it happened. It's being able to forgive and to let it go. In terms of releasing those people, I forgive you, I release you, and seeing them go, so that there is there's a completion. There is a completion. Have you seen the movie The Unmistakable Child?
No, I haven't.
It's a fabulous film. Everyone should see this. It is about one of the Rinpoches that passed away, and then his right hand monk who has always taken care of him has to find his reincarnation. And this documentary was filmed over several years. I mean, from 2000 to I think about 2005. It's just a huge, brilliant labor of love, and he finds his reincarnation, and it is amazing, this movie. And it's again such confirmation to what we're talking about right now, that people do reincarnate.
You know, now when it comes to reincarnation, do we actually choose the life that we want to come into? I mean, the family that we come into? Because I've heard this, and you kind of take a look and go, okay, if karma is true, well, we're just saying that it is, and that you actually choose the life to come into, why do we make those choices? It almost seems that the new body, if you will, almost is kind of under the spell of something else, in a way.
Right. My understanding from the spirit realm and what they've told me, meaning, you know, past and angels and guides and, you know, the higher realms that I work with, I have been told that it is a tremendous concert of everything that comes together as to where we're going to go and who we're incarnating with. And that oftentimes the concert that goes on is what your karma is, what your completion of things is, where you're at that time. It is, and in fact, it's been described to me that it is so complex, this concert of energy that comes together, that it's almost, you know, difficult for us to really understand, perceive, because we're not in the spirit realm with the perception that they have there. Meaning, again, what I understand is that it is such an intense state of love that they're in the spirit realm, it is almost beyond our comprehension. And that is why our mission statement, if you will, for being here as souls in bodies on the earth is to love at the deepest level of our being, is to connect us with that. You know, and we all love, I mean, we love our families, we love our kids, we love our pets, we love our parents, but we haven't even tapped in to, you know, the depth of love that really does exist, and that is what everyone in the spirit realm is experiencing. And so my point is that we have to find that place, whatever that is, and I believe it's because there is a higher power. I call it the God body. You know, the universe. Everybody has a different name for their creator, their higher power. You know, so I don't want to get hung up on what everybody calls God and the universe.
Right.
I just want to say that it is in concert with that energy that we actually come through and incarnate again. And I understand from the spirit realm that we don't incarnate right away. Certainly, someone like who's a Rinpoche or the Dalai Lama may incarnate right away because they've worked through certain things karmically that they're able to do that. But on the general scale of most people, I understand that we go over there and we actually have a soul responsibility to our family. We have it's like a responsibility to the pod that we came through, and we become guardian angels to those children and grandchildren that are here in our family group. Stay with that family group only for a while as we are guardian angels to those people who are still here. I only see maybe 2 or 3 generations out. You know, I'll see my dad, my grandparents, but not necessarily my great-grandparents, depending on, you know, where people have been released to incarnate again. Sometimes people incarnate very quickly. If it's a sudden death or even if it's a child who has passed, they'll incarnate again very quickly. It depends on the situation. It depends on how they died. But to be able to give you a really clear answer, okay, this is the formula for how we incarnate and what family we choose, I think it's extremely complex, and I think that for us to think we're going to incarnate into our families again is not necessarily true. I think that we do change soul groups. I do think that we manifest and we come through where it is a match for us. Karmically speaking, where is it a match for us? I'm sure, you've been in many family pods in your incarnations, and there is a connection to those people, meaning someone who might have been your mother in a past life has become your dear friend in this lifetime. It's like we have these very, very strong connections with people. And we meet people all the time and go, God, I just feel like I know you. Are you sure we haven't met before? It's like you feel so connected to them. And that's karma. I mean, that's your connection to the bigger soul pod, which is humanity.
Interesting stuff. It's sometimes hard for people to wrap their, minds around what we're talking about here because of how they are in this life now, preoccupied with what's going on with them in this life here, trying to improve oneself to be better, bigger, stronger, and faster. And you get to a philosophical plane about this whole thing and you realize, why am I making all the little stuff matter so much? When a person gets to a point that you believe they've actually got it, so to speak, what does that lifetime tend to look like?
Well, I think that it looks like people are really, I feel, to some extent working so hard and yet missing a really critical piece. As I stated before and what's stated in the book is the mission statement for humanity. We're here to love at the deepest. And our homework is to feel our feelings, and the result of the homework is to forgive because we have karma. And I feel that we get so wrapped up in technology and going fast, as you said, and trying to be better and have a better place to live and give our kids what we didn't get when we were growing up, and on and on and on. And all of that is quite admirable. However, the key element that's missing is the earth, is that we aren't here to be somehow accommodated by the earth. We are not here on earth to take from the earth because, it's our God-given right. We're here as the stewards of the earth. We're here to protect the earth and to make sure that the earth and the earth's energies are maintained and protected. And whenever I tune into the earth, the thing I hear from her the most is stop drilling these holes in me. And I find that so interesting that the voice and what I hear of the earth is that she's in pain.
Right.
And, the one thing I do know about the earth is that she's very powerful and quite literally could just shake us off like we're a bunch of fleas. And I think that we have to stop and maybe pause and remember that we are here to protect her and take care of her. That's part of our jobs as being souls in bodies on the earth, in my opinion. And I feel we've lost that track a little bit, and I really want to help people come back to it, even if it means that just on Saturdays they go for a hike with their kids, or they go out into the yard and they put their hands on the ground and they thank the earth for all that she gives us, and they give back to her a little bit. There's so many ways to communicate with the spirit realm and the energy and the spirit of the earth. And a lot of this, of course, comes full circle with my book and the process of death and dying, in that we do return to the earth. We do return to the earth, if you will, and I think that we need to keep that piece in perspective, because as we keep rising above the earth, we're flying, we're walking on concrete sidewalks, we're driving our cars, we're not that connected anymore. I haven't seen any of us running through the woods with bow and arrows on our backs recently.
Right.
It's important to get out there and to really remember where we are. where we are, because, there's my guides told me at one point that the Earth is the nucleus of the cell, and the cell is our solar system. Without the nucleus, the cell would not. Importance of us really.
For those of you joining us, we're talking with Sonia Grace, author of Angels in the 21st Century and a Perspective on Death and Dying. Now, Sonia, when it comes to what you've just been describing about how Mother Earth is frustrated because we're drilling and poking and prodding and poisoning and doing all these things, my curious question comes then, back as mankind dawned on the horizon, where did this change of perspective about being stewards of the earth as they were then change to the state that we do what we do now, if in fact reincarnation exists? Where was that shift to where we're treating the planet the way that we treat it today?
I believe that no longer had to many centuries. Now we shop and gather.
Yep.
We no longer hunt and gather. That it changed a lot of things. I mean, if you think about what that reality really means, that we're going to have to go out and gather and hunt for our meal for tonight, that's right there. That is, a basic first chakra level, situation that has to be remedied immediately, and there is no safe way to help us out. And so it not only connects you immediately with the earth and what the earth is providing for your survival, but it also is connecting you with how you're walking on her, how quiet you are, how connected you are, so that you can find that very meal that you're searching for. Right?
And it was interesting that you put it that way, because I was thinking of The Whale Dreamer, I believe was the name of the movie, and someone had asked me, they didn't understand why the girl was ritualed to the point where she went with the whale and simply drowned. And I said, well, there was a time when mankind was in harmony with nature, that it was give and take, and it was a very fair exchange. And I said, simply is because the whales themselves actually sacrifice one of their own for the tribe itself so that they can survive. That's their way of life. And in return, every so often, a particular person is chosen out of the tribe and ritual to actually give back to what the whales had been given. And they still couldn't seem to figure out what I was talking about, but that seemed to be an element of sacrifice that mankind used to understand, but we now feel that everything just belongs to us. We're just going to take it with nothing in return but garbage. And you just kind of wonder again where we slipped off there.
Right. Well, I believe that we started to really a lot of what I call earthways through the culmination and formation of different religions, and I feel that our religious structures have really dictated to us in a sense throughout each century that there have been different belief systems, our process of death, our understanding of death. The one thing I really appreciate about the Buddhist perspective of death and dying is that they feel it's really important to not cause suffering for your loved ones, to not create suffering for your loved ones. Meaning, you find out that you're ill and that you have something that is causing you to, sooner than later. And their perspective is you do not bring suffering to your family by making it a big drama. You simply, acknowledge that you've had a great life and you thank God for your life, and you go with dignity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really beautiful thing, because I can't tell you how many people out there in the world have made, Broadway productions out of their passing because they don't want to go. You know, and
watching too many westerns, probably.
Yes, and their families have suffered tremendously with the drama, if you will, and that it really is, perhaps from a particular perspective, a very selfish kind of act, instead of really understanding what that death passage is, and maybe being a little more, excited that that's what's coming. For certainly, in my perspective, we go on to a really beautiful place, and we have, I believe, a lot to look forward to in terms of, yes, we're here on this beautiful planet Earth, and we have bodies, and we're healthy and we're good, but that when we do go, that we are going on, that it's not just some null and void place, or or some really hot place, or some really some place where we're floating around on a cloud. I mean, and we have responsibility in the spirit realm, just as we have responsibility here on Earth. And people ask me all the time about suicide. What about people who commit suicide? The thing that happens for people who commit suicide is they have to complete what they had to do here on Earth, but they're trying to complete it in the spirit realm. They know now they don't have a body, meaning the vehicle, to get themselves around to complete their task, their karmic mission here on Earth. They've got to try to do it from the spirit realm. It's very sad that suicide is interpreted in so many ways, but it's really sad that people perhaps miss that perception that they're going to have to keep working on their stuff, but they're in the spirit realm, no body. Yeah.
That's one thing. It's always interesting because we've talked about death on our program many times, and it seems the more you talk about it, the more fascinating it becomes. But then by the same token, life itself becomes just as fascinating, so you really have true balance. And and I guess the biggest thing, it's just interesting to me that around the world that it can be generally accepted that when you die, that you're either going to heaven or you're going to hell, so there's a sense of being judged. But from what I'm hearing today is that's not true.
No, that is not what I've been told and what I've experienced. When I see people's loved ones come through, I had someone's aunt come through who had been a nun her whole life, and she said, the first thing out of her mouth to her niece was, "It's nothing like what we have said it was. It's nothing like what we had said it was." She said, "This place is beautiful," and she says it's far greater than I ever thought. And when she was asked, well, is there a hell? She laughed and she said no. So there's been so many, and I've had other experiences of people who were, of certain religions that have died, and they've come back and talked to me through. They've all said it's nothing like what we've said, and I'm not trying to pick any kind of difficulties with any religious groups. I respect all of them and I embrace all of them, but I do feel that there is maybe some some old and outmoded belief systems about death and dying that maybe need to be brought into the 21st century.
Now, here's something that I want, in closing here for our audience to know, and I'd like you to elaborate a little bit on this, and this is an interesting part of your book here. When we compare, we minimize. When we minimize, we lose the opportunity to process and feel our feelings. Feeling our feelings is the main work we are here to do on Earth. Tell us about that.
We go into comparison with another person. We our own experience. And a lot of times what comes out of that comparison is
and what's sad about that is that's how our marketing schematic has created the idea of comparison, so that you need and you're urged to be like somebody else rather than who you are.
Exactly. Absolutely right. And we all have the opportunity to really take a look at ourselves and feel what our feelings are in any given situation, in any experience that we're having, and just to know that our feelings are real, they're valid, they're our own authentic experience of that moment. And, of course, no one can take your feelings away from you. No one can tell you you're wrong because they're your feelings, you know. And in order to perhaps stop that cycle of comparison, we have to just maybe have that inner marker inside of us that says, okay, sit with that, rather than go into comparing my friend or my sibling or my spouse, you know, and feeling less than or somehow feeling bad about myself that I didn't do X, Y, or Z. Because that's what happens is people compare themselves and somehow feel that they're not doing it or they're not good enough or they're not hitting the mark, as opposed to simply celebrating this is their moment and this is what they're experiencing in their moment, and it's valid and it's real.
I know Marianne Williamson, when we had her on our program about a year or so ago, had an excellent little series on tape where she was kind of describing A Course in Miracles. And it was the first time that I had heard the word sin used that made sense to me. Now, most people, as they hear the word sin, they think, well, that's when you do all these bad things, and that's what's going to cause you to go to hell. Well, don't worry about it if you're Christian. Jesus died, so he's cleared all that, but just make sure you don't keep doing it. But the fact is she had related that that sin itself is actually an old word meaning off the mark. It's an actual archery term. And so when you say hitting the mark truly in this lifetime is to be able to feel and enjoy who we uniquely are. To sin is to go, well, I'd rather be like that person over there, so you're off the mark. Interesting.
That's very interesting, yeah. And I feel that people are really hungry right now. They're really hungry for earth waves. They're really hungry for connecting on a spiritual level that perhaps they're not finding in their church or in their religious structure that they grew up in. And, you know, I'm getting ready to do a whole series of earthway practices and meditations, and I'm really excited because that's the next big thing I'm coming out with. And I just want to urge people to connect with the earth and to remember that this process of death and dying is really a brilliant passage if you want to experience it in that way. It's nothing to fear, and that your grandparents and your loved ones are there on the other side. They're very much there supporting you, and they're there to assist you and help you, as well as the angelic force, you know, and you know, what I feel is this tremendous support system that we have in the spirit realm is there to help you when you make your crossing. And there is not a passage that has ever, in my opinion, been made that has not been gone directly to the light. If someone doesn't go directly to the light, it's because their death was so sudden and so shocking that it's like they're stuck here. They're trying to figure out what happened. And I've helped many souls to get assistance and get to the light because of those types of situations. But usually it's a sudden death. To get the assistance that they need, but if they're struggling with what happened, like they just don't get what happened because it's the farthest thing from their mind that they would die. It may take a little bit of time, and then they go to the light, because a lot of times, but they all go to the light, every single one of them. And I feel that I hope that my book and that what I'm saying today really puts people's minds at ease, that there is nothing to fear. Certainly, it can be a way to pave the road for the next lifetime so that there is less of a karmic burden and perhaps more of a pathway to their own enlightenment and their own higher consciousness.
The book is Angels in the 21st Century. Our guest today is Sonia Grace. Is there a website people can find out more about your work?
Yeah, it's www.sonia, SONJA, Grace, GRACE.com.
Sonia Grace, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program with a death and a new perspective.
Thank you.
We want to thank you, the listening audience out there, for tuning in as well. If you have any questions or comments, certainly just shoot us an email, beyond50@beyond50radio.com, and also be sure to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com as well, and sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter, as well as visit our blog where we archive our shows and have great resource information for you to use as well as to send to others. We thank you again for tuning in. Also want to thank a couple of sponsors for helping support this program. ZRT Laboratories. Let hormone testing be your guide to long life and prosperity. Also want to thank Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center. That's right, with their 21-day program for reversing and curing diabetes. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. Remember, live your day past halfway.